The sun was setting over the imposing Hawthorne mansion, painting the sky in shades of red and gold that contrasted with the coldness emanating from its stone walls. In the main office, Arthur Hawthorne, a 75-year-old man with silver hair and steel-grey eyes, observed the city at his feet through the large windows. His face, marked by time and power, showed no emotion as he held the results of his latest medical exams in his trembling hands. "Mr. Hawthorne," his personal doctor's voice resonated in the room, "the results are not encouraging the progression of your illness." Arthur raised a hand, silencing the doctor with an abrupt gesture. "Spare me the details, Dr. Miller. How long do I have?" Dr. Miller, a middle-aged man, accustomed to dealing with the city's elite, swallowed before responding. "With proper treatment, we could be talking about a year, maybe 2, but you'll need constant care, Mr. Hawthorne. Your condition requires round-the-clock attention." Arthur turned, his eyes flashing with a mixture of anger and disdain. "Care? Do you see me as an invalid, doctor? I've built an empire with these hands. I don't need anyone to take care of me." "Sir, I understand your position, but—" "No, you don't understand anything," Arthur snapped, slamming his fist on his desk. "Get out of here, and not a word of this to anyone, understood? Not even to my children." The doctor nodded hastily and left the office, leaving Arthur alone with his thoughts and the weight of his diagnosis. Outside, in the hallway, he ran into Richard and Sarah Hawthorne, Arthur's children, who were waiting anxiously. "Well?" asked Richard, a 40-year-old man who was the spitting image of his father in his youth. "What did the tests say?" Dr. Miller looked nervously towards the closed office door. "I'm sorry, but Mr. Hawthorne was very clear I can't reveal anything without his consent." Sarah, an elegant 35-year-old woman, narrowed her eyes. "Doctor, we're his family. We have the right to know." "I understand, Miss Hawthorne, but my professional ethics—" "Your professional ethics depend on the contracts my father signs," Richard interrupted, his voice threatening. "I suggest you reconsider your position." The doctor paled, but before he could respond, the office door burst open. Arthur appeared in the doorway, his figure imposing despite his age. "What are you doing here?" he growled, looking at his children suspiciously. Sarah stepped forward, her face a mask of concern. "Dad, we just wanted to know how you were. We're worried about you." Arthur let out a dry laugh. "Worried? The only thing you're worried about is your inheritance. Well, rest. Assured I still have a lot of living to do and much to accomplish. And you, Miller," he added, addressing the doctor, "you can go now. Your services are no longer needed." The doctor nodded nervously and walked away down the hallway, leaving the Hawthorne family in tense silence. Arthur looked at his children with contempt before returning to his office, slamming the door behind him with a bang that echoed throughout the mansion. Richard and Sarah exchanged glances. "This can't go on," Richard muttered. "We need to know what's going on." "I'll handle it," Sarah replied, pulling out her cell phone. "I have my contacts at the hospital. I'll find out what's wrong with Dad, I promise." Meanwhile, on the other side of the city, in a small apartment in the working-class neighborhood, Emily Parker finished preparing dinner for her mother, Linda. The smell of homemade soup filled the modest space, creating a warm atmosphere that contrasted with the cold reality of their situation. "Mom, dinner's ready," Emily called carefully, serving the soup into a bowl. Linda Parker, a 55-year-old woman whose face showed the ravages of a prolonged illness, slowly approached the table, leaning on a cane. "Thank you, my dear. I don't know what I'd do without you." Emily smiled, hiding the concern in her eyes. "Don't say that, Mom. You know I'd do anything for you." They sat down to eat in silence, each lost in their thoughts. Emily couldn't help but glance at the rows of medication bottles lined up on the kitchen counter, a constant reminder of the battle her mother was fighting day by day. "Emily," Linda said, suddenly breaking the silence, "I don't want you to keep sacrificing yourself like this for me. You're young. You should be living your life, not taking care of a sick, old woman." "Mom, please don't start," Emily replied, taking her mother's hand. "You know it's not a sacrifice. Besides, with the new job at the luxury nursing home, we'll be able to pay for your treatment. Things are going to get better. You'll see." Linda sighed, her eyes filling with tears. "You're so good, my dear, so much like your father." Emily tensed at the mention of her father, a topic that had always been taboo in their home. "Mom, you know I don't need to know anything about him. He abandoned us, remember? It's you and me against the world." Linda nodded weakly, but Emily could see a flash of something else in her eyes. Guilt? Regret? Before she could inquire further, Emily's phone rang, breaking the moment. "Yes, oh, hi, Lucy," Emily answered, recognizing her supervisor's voice from the nursing home. "Tomorrow? Yes, of course I can start earlier. No, it's not a problem. Thanks for letting me know." She hung up and looked at her mother with a forced smile. "Work needs me early tomorrow. It seems a new resident is arriving, and they want everything to be perfect." "Go, my dear," Linda said with a tired smile. "I'll be fine. I want you to do your best at that job." Emily nodded, unaware that this new resident would change her life forever. The next morning, Sunset Grove, a luxury complex for wealthy seniors, was bustling with activity. Emily arrived early, as promised, and met Lucy at the reception. "Good morning, Emily," Lucy greeted, a middle-aged woman with an air of efficiency. "Thanks for coming in early. The new resident is well. Let's say he's someone important. We need everything to be impeccable." Emily nodded, putting on her uniform. "Don't worry, Lucy, I'll make sure everything's perfect. Who's the new resident?" Lucy looked around, making sure no one else could hear them. "It's Arthur Hawthorne." Emily blinked, surprised. Even she, who wasn't very familiar with high society circles, knew that name. "The businessman? I thought he owned half the city. Why would he come to a nursing home?" Lucy shrugged. "Apparently his children have convinced him that he needs to rest. But I warn you, Emily, be careful. They say he has a difficult temperament." "Don't worry," Emily replied with a confident smile. "I've dealt with all kinds of people here. I'll be fine." Little did Emily know that her confidence would be tested like never before. Meanwhile, at the Hawthorne mansion, Arthur watched furiously as his children supervised the packing of his belongings. "This is ridiculous," he roared, throwing an expensive vase to the floor where it shattered. "I don't need to go to any damn nursing home. This is my house." Richard, maintaining forced calm, approached his father. "Dad, it's for your own good. The doctor said you need constant care at Sunset Grove. You'll have everything you need." "What I need is to be left alone," Arthur roared. "Do you think I don't know what you're doing? You want to push me aside, control my business? Well, you're in for a surprise. I'm not finished yet." Sarah intervened, her voice soft but firm. "Nobody wants to push you aside, Dad. We just want what's best for you. Sunset Grove is a beautiful place and you can rest there." Arthur looked at them with contempt. "Rest as if I could rest, knowing that you two are lurking, waiting for me to kick the bucket so you can divide my fortune." "Dad!" Sarah exclaimed, hurt. "How can you think that of us?" "Because I know you," Arthur replied bitterly. "I raised you to be like me, ruthless in business. And now you pretend to have feelings. Don't make me laugh." Richard, losing patience, approached his father. "Enough, Dad. You're going to that nursing home whether you like it or not. It's for your own good. And if you don't understand that, you leave us no choice." Arthur stared at him, his eyes shining with a mixture of anger and something else, fear. "Are you threatening me? Me? I'm Arthur Hawthorne. I've built an empire from nothing. I've crushed tougher competitors than you two put together. And now you need to rest," Sarah insisted, gently taking her father's arm. "Please, Dad, do it for us." Arthur shook off his daughter's grip, but something in his posture changed. For a moment, he looked older and more tired than they had ever seen him. "Fine," he finally said, his voice a hoarse whisper. "I'll go to that damn nursing home, but don't think for a moment that this changes anything. I'm still the owner of everything, understood?" Richard and Sarah nodded, exchanging looks of relief. "Of course, Dad," Richard said. "Now, why don't you rest a bit while we finish packing?" Arthur didn't respond. He went to his favorite armchair and sat down, looking out the window with an indecipherable expression. His children quietly left the room, leaving him alone with his thoughts. Once outside, Richard turned to his sister. "That went better than I expected." Sarah nodded, but her expression was worried. "Yes, but I don't like seeing him like this. He seems defeated." "It's for the best," Richard insisted. "With Dad at Sunset Grove, we can manage the business without his interference. You've seen how he is. His decisions are becoming erratic. He could sink the company if he continues like this." "I know," Sarah sighed, "but I can't help feeling that we're betraying him somehow." Richard took his sister by the shoulders, looking at her intently. "Listen to me, Sarah. We're doing the right thing. Dad needs to rest, and we need to protect the family legacy. It's a win-win." Sarah nodded slowly, but a part of her couldn't shake the feeling that they were making a grave mistake. Meanwhile, at Sunset Grove, Emily was finishing preparing the luxury suite intended for Arthur Hawthorne. She had taken special care with every detail, from the arrangement of the furniture to the selection of books on the shelf. "Well, well," said a voice behind her. "Looks like someone's gone all out." Emily turned to find Jack, another employee of the nursing home. He was an attractive man in his 30s who always seemed to have a mischievous smile on his face. "I'm just doing my job, Jack," Emily replied, trying to hide. Her discomfort Jack always made her nervous, although she didn't know exactly why. "Oh, come on," he insisted, moving closer. "We all know you're Lucy's favorite. I'm sure you're hoping to impress the great Arthur Hawthorne, aren't you? Maybe you'll get a raise or something more." Emily frowned, annoyed by the insinuation. "I don't know what you're talking about. I just want Mr. Hawthorne to feel comfortable, nothing more." Jack raised his hands in a gesture of false surrender. All right. Don't get upset, I was just joking." He moved a little closer, lowering his voice. "But seriously, be careful with that old man. I've heard stories about him. They say he's a real demon in business." "Thanks for the warning," Emily replied dryly, "but I think I can handle it." Before Jack could respond, Lucy appeared at the door. "Emily, Mr. Hawthorne has arrived. Is everything ready?" "Yes, everything's prepared," Emily replied, grateful for the interruption. "Perfect, come with me. I want you to be present when we receive him." Emily followed Lucy, leaving Jack behind with a final warning glance. As they walked towards the main entrance, Emily couldn't help but feel a mixture of nervousness and curiosity. What would Arthur Hawthorne really be like? At the entrance of Sunset Grove, a luxurious black car came to a smooth stop. The chauffeur quickly got out to open the rear door, and from it emerged Arthur Hawthorne. Despite his age and apparent frailty, his presence was imposing. He wore an impeccable suit, and his cold, calculating gaze swept over the place with evident disgust. Behind him, Richard and Sarah got out of the car, their faces a mixture of concern and relief. Lucy stepped forward to greet them, with Emily following close. "Behind, welcome to Sunset Grove, Mr. Hawthorne," Lucy greeted with a professional smile. "It's an honor to have you with us. I'm Lucy Delaney, the director of the residence, and this is Emily Parker, who will be in charge of your personal care." Arthur barely gave them a glance. "Spare me the formalities, Mrs. Delaney. I'm not here by choice." Lucy maintained her smile, although Emily could notice how she tensed slightly. "Of course, Mr. Hawthorne. Allow us to show you your suite. I'm sure you'll be comfortable here." As the group headed towards the building's interior, Emily couldn't help but notice Arthur's gaze upon her. It was a strange look, a mixture of disgust and curiosity. For a moment, their eyes met, and Emily felt a shiver run down her spine. There was something in those grey eyes, something she couldn't decipher. Arthur's suite was undoubtedly the most luxurious. At Sunset Grove, spacious and elegant with views of the garden, it was designed to offer maximum comfort. However, Arthur seemed anything but impressed. "And I'm supposed to stay here," he growled, looking around with disdain. "I've seen hotel rooms bigger than this," Richard intervened, his voice tinged with impatience. "Come on, Dad. It's a beautiful place. Give it a chance." Arthur turned to his son, his eyes dangerously bright. "A chance? Like the one you're giving me?" "I'm not stupid, Richard. I know perfectly well why you've brought me here." Sarah stepped forward, her voice soft but firm. "Dad, please, we just want what's best for you. You need to rest, to recover." "Recover?" Arthur let out a bitter laugh. "What I need is to go back to my office. My businesses don't run themselves, you know." Emily, who had been observing the scene in silence, couldn't help but feel a pang of compassion for the old man. Despite his harshness, She could see the fear and vulnerability hidden behind his facade of anger. Lucy, sensing the tension in the atmosphere, intervened tactfully. "Mr. Hawthorne, why don't we show you the rest of the facilities? We have a beautiful garden, a very complete library." "I'm not interested," Arthur cut her off. "The only thing I want is to be left alone." "All of you," he added, looking at his children. Richard and Sarah exchanged worried glances. Finally, Richard spoke. "All right, Dad. We'll let you rest. We'll come back tomorrow to see how you've settled in." "Don't bother," Arthur replied, turning his back to look out the window. With a sigh of resignation, Richard and Sarah said goodbye to Lucy and Emily and left the room. In the hallway, Sarah paused, her eyes filled with tears. "Are we doing the right thing, Richard?" She asked quietly. Her brother hugged her briefly. "It's the best for everyone, Sarah. Dad needs this, even if he doesn't see it now, and we need to protect the family business. It's what he would have done in our place." Sarah nodded, unconvinced, and together they left Sunset Grove, leaving their father in the hands of strangers. Back in the suite, Lucy turned to Emily. "Emily, could you stay with Mr. Hawthorne for a moment? Make sure he has everything he needs. I'll be back in a while to see how everything's going." Emily nodded, although internally she felt nervous. Staying alone with Arthur Hawthorne wasn't exactly something she wanted, but it was her job. Once Lucy left, an uncomfortable silence filled the room. Arthur was still standing by the window, his posture rigid and his gaze lost on the horizon. Emily cleared her throat softly. "Mr. Hawthorne, is there anything I can do for you? Perhaps you'd like some tea or coffee?" Arthur turned slowly, his eyes fixed on Emily with an intensity that made her take a step back. "What I want," he said in a low and dangerous voice, "is to be left alone. Is that so hard to understand?" Emily took a deep breath, reminding herself to stay calm. "I understand, Mr. Hawthorne, but I'm here to help you with whatever you need. If you prefer to be alone, I'll respect that, but I want you to know that you can count on me for anything." For a moment, something seemed to change in Arthur's expression, a flash of recognition, surprise. But as quickly as it appeared, it vanished, replaced by his usual mask of disdain. "Count on you?" he repeated mockingly. "And who are you, girl? Do you think that because they've assigned you to take care of me, you're important? You're nothing more than another expendable employee in this place." The words hit Emily like a whiplash, but she stood her ground. "You're right, Mr. Hawthorne, I'm just an employee, but I'm an employee who cares about your well-being, whether you like it or not." Arthur looked at her intently, as if he were evaluating her. Finally, he let out a snort of disgust. "Spare me the compassion, girl. I don't need it, nor do I want it. Now, if you're done with your inspirational speech, could you do something useful and bring me a whiskey?" Emily frowned. "I'm sorry, Mr. Hawthorne, but alcohol is restricted here. I can bring you a juice or—" "Restricted?" Arthur interrupted, his voice dangerously rising. "Am I in a prison? Who the hell do they think they are to tell me what I can or can't drink?" "These are the rules of the residence, sir," Emily replied, maintaining her calm. "They're designed to protect the health of all residents." Arthur approached her, his face contorted with anger. "Listen to me well, girl. I don't care about your rules or those of this damn place. I'm Arthur Hawthorne, and if I want a whiskey, I'll have a damn whiskey, understood?" Emily took a step back, feeling her heart beating hard. But despite the fear, something inside her rebelled against the intimidation. "I understand perfectly, Mr. Hawthorne," she said firmly. "I understand that you're used to everyone doing your will. But here, at Sunset Grove, we're all equal, and my job is to take care of your health whether you like it or not." For a moment, silence filled the room. Arthur looked at her with a mixture of surprise and fury, as if he couldn't believe that someone dared to speak to him like that. Emily, for her part, braced herself for the worst, sure that she had just made a mistake that would cost her her job. But then, something unexpected happened. Arthur Hawthorne, the feared businessman, the man who had made executives and politicians alike tremble, began to laugh. It was a harsh laugh, almost painful, but a laugh nonetheless. "Well, well," he finally said, looking at Emily with a new light in his eyes. "It seems you've got guts, girl. Not many would dare to speak to me like that. Emily, still tense, didn't know how to respond. Arthur walked away, looking out the window again. All right, no whiskey. But don't think this changes anything. You're still just an employee, and I'm still Arthur Hawthorne. I'm clear on that, sir, Emily replied, allowing herself to relax a bit. Can I bring you anything else? Arthur made a gesture with his hand, dismissing her. No, leave me alone, you've caused enough trouble for today. Emily nodded and headed for the door. But before she left, Arthur's voice stopped her. What did you say your name was? Emily, Sir Emily Parker. Arthur remained still for a moment, as if the name had awakened something in him. But when he spoke, his voice was cold and distant again. Well, Emily Parker, I suppose we'll see each other tomorrow. That's right, sir. Have a good night. With those words, Emily left the room, gently closing the door behind her. She leaned against the wall in the hallway, letting out a long sigh. Her first encounter with Arthur Hawthorne had been intense, to say the least, but something about him, in the way he had looked at her at the end, intrigued her. There was a story there, she was sure. A story that, without knowing it, was about to change her life forever. Meanwhile, in the solitude of his new room, Arthur Hawthorne looked out the window, his mind a whirlwind of thoughts and emotions. Emily's image, her courage in confronting him, mixed in his mind with distant memories he had tried to bury for decades. Parker, he muttered to himself, it can't be. He shook his head, trying to push away the thoughts that threatened to overwhelm him. It was a coincidence, nothing more. It had to be. Because if it wasn't, if there was something more behind all this, then the past he had tried so hard to forget was about to catch up with him. And Arthur Hawthorne wasn't sure he was ready to face it. The next morning, Emily woke up early, her mind still spinning from the events of the previous day. As she prepared for work, she couldn't stop thinking about Arthur Hawthorne and the strange feeling she had had when she was near him. There was something in his eyes, in the way he had looked at her at the end, that unsettled her. It's just your imagination, she told herself as she got dressed. He's just another difficult resident, nothing more. But no matter how hard she tried to convince herself, a part of her knew there was something more, something she couldn't explain, but felt deep in her being. Before leaving, Emily stopped by her mother's bed, who was still sleeping, peacefully. Carefully, she adjusted the blankets and left a note on the nightstand, along with the morning medications. I love you, Mom, she whispered, gently kissing Linda's forehead. I'll be back soon. The journey to Sunset Grove was like any other day, but Emily couldn't shake the feeling that something important was about to happen. Upon arrival, she met Lucy at the reception. Good morning, Emily, Lucy greeted with a tense smile. How did everything go yesterday with Mr. Hawthorne? Emily hesitated for a moment, unsure of how much to reveal. It was interesting, she finally said. Mr. Hawthorne is certainly a complicated man. Lucy let out a dry laugh. That's a kind way of putting it. I've received complaints from other residents about his shouting last night. It seems our new guest isn't very happy with his situation. Give me time, Emily said with more confidence than she felt. I think I can handle the situation. Lucy looked at her with a mixture of admiration and concern. I trust you, Emily, but be careful. Arthur Hawthorne is not a man to be trifled with. Emily nodded and headed towards Arthur's room, her heart beating hard as she approached. When she reached the door, she took a deep breath before knocking. Come in, a voice growled from inside. Emily entered to find Arthur, already dressed and sitting by the window, his gaze fixed on the garden outside. However, when he turned to look at her, Emily noticed something different in his eyes. The hostility of the previous day had been replaced by something else, curiosity perhaps. Good morning, Mr. Hawthorne, Emily greeted with a kind smile. How are you feeling today? Arthur studied her for a moment before responding. I'm trapped in this damn place against my will. How do you think I'm feeling? Despite his harsh words, his tone lacked the venom of the previous day. Emily decided to take this as a small victory. I understand this is not an ideal situation for you, she said, approaching carefully, "but I'm here to make your stay as comfortable as possible. Is there anything I can do to help?" Arthur looked at her intently, as if trying to solve a complicated puzzle. "Tell me, Emily Parker," he finally said, pronouncing her name with a strange emphasis. "Why are you here?" The question took Emily by surprise. "Excuse me?" "Don't play dumb," Arthur continued. "Why do you work in this place? A young woman like you should be in college or starting a career, not taking care of grumpy old men." Emily felt a pang of pain at the mention of college, a dream she had had to abandon. "I have my reasons, Mr. Hawthorne," she replied calmly. "Not all of us have the luxury of choosing our path in life." Something in her tone must have struck a chord with Arthur, because his expression softened slightly. "No, I suppose not," he muttered, more to himself than to her. There was a moment of silence, charged with a tension that neither of them fully understood. Finally, Emily spoke. "Mr. Hawthorne, I know you don't want to be here, but since you are, why not try to make the best of the situation? We have daily activities, a beautiful garden to walk in." Arthur let out a snort. "Activities? Walks in the garden? I'm not a child at a summer camp, girl." "No, you're a respected businessman," Emily replied, surprising herself with her boldness. "Don't you see this as a business opportunity?" Arthur raised an eyebrow, intrigued despite himself. "A business opportunity? Explain yourself." Emily, encouraged by his interest, continued. "Well, you have at your disposal a group of people with decades of experience in various fields. Why not take advantage of that wisdom? You could organize discussion groups, exchange ideas." For a moment, Emily feared she had gone too far, but then, to her surprise, Arthur let out a laugh. It wasn't a warm laugh, but it wasn't the bitter laugh of the day before either. Well, he said, looking at her with new respect. "It seems you have brains as well as guts. It's not a bad idea, I must admit." Emily felt a wave of relief and pride. "Thank you, Mr. Hawthorne. If you'll allow me, I can help you organize something." Arthur nodded slowly. "Very well, Emily Parker. Let's see what you can do, but don't get your hopes up. This doesn't mean I like being here or that we're friends." "Of course not, sir," Emily replied with a small smile. "I'm just doing my job." As she left the room to begin preparations, Emily couldn't help but feel that she had taken an important step. She had managed to break through, if only a little, Arthur Hawthorne's shell. What she didn't know was that that small advance was about to trigger a series of events that would change their lives forever. Meanwhile, in the central offices of Hawthorne Enterprises, Richard and Sarah were in the middle of a heated discussion. "We can't go on like this, Richard," Sarah insisted, pacing nervously around the office that once belonged to their father. "The investors are nervous. They need to see Dad, make sure everything is under control." Richard, sitting behind the imposing mahogany desk, massaged his temples in frustration. "And what do you suggest we do? That we take him out of the nursing home and bring him here as if nothing had happened?" "If necessary, yes," Sarah replied firmly. "It's his company, Richard. His legacy. We can't just push him aside like this." Richard stood up abruptly, his face reddened with anger. "His legacy? And what about us, Sarah? What about everything we've worked for? Dad is no longer in a condition to run this company. You know that as well as I do." Sarah collapsed into a chair, the weight of the situation falling on her. "I know, but don't you think we've rushed? Maybe if we talk to him, if we explain the situation." "We already tried that, remember?" Richard interrupted. "It was his stubbornness that forced us to make this decision. It's for his own good and for the good of the company." Before Sarah could respond, the office door burst open. Jack, Arthur's personal assistant, entered with a panicked expression on his face. "Mr. Richard, Miss Sarah," he gasped, "you have to see this." He handed them a tablet where a news video was playing. In it, a reporter was speaking in front of the gates of Sunset Grove. Rumors about the health of magnate Arthur Hawthorne's sources close to the family claim that the businessman has been admitted to this exclusive residence due to health problems. The question everyone is asking is Arthur Hawthorne really ill, or is there something more behind his sudden seclusion? Richard turned off the video with a brusque gesture, his face pale with rage and concern. How the hell did they find out? he growled. Sarah brought a hand to her mouth, horrified. This is a disaster. If the investors see this, we have to control it, Richard interrupted. Jack, prepare a press conference for this afternoon. We'll say that Dad is taking a well-deserved vacation, nothing more. But Richard, Sarah protested, what if Dad sees the news? You know he won't stay quiet. Richard looked at her, a cold determination in his eyes. Then we'll have to make sure he doesn't. See it, Jack. Call the nursing home. Have them disconnect the television in Dad's room and tell them not to allow him access to newspapers or the internet. What? Sarah exclaimed, incredulous. Richard, you can't do that. It's practically keeping him prisoner. It's temporary, Richard insisted. Just until we control the situation, it's for his own good, Sarah, and for the good of all of us. Sarah looked at her brother, a mixture of fear and doubt in her eyes. What had they become? When had they gone from protecting their father to practically imprisoning him? But before she could express her doubts, Richard was already in motion, barking orders at Jack and preparing to face the press. Sarah remained there, silent, feeling that they were crossing a line from which there might be no turning back. What none of them knew was that their actions were about to trigger a series of events that would shake the foundations of the Hawthorne family and reveal secrets buried for decades. Back at Sunset Grove, Emily was in the library, organizing the details for the first meeting of the discussion group she had proposed to Arthur. She was so concentrated on her task that she didn't notice Jack's presence until he spoke. Working hard, huh? Emily startled, almost dropping the books she was holding. Jack, you scared me, she said, trying to calm her racing heart. Jack smiled, but there was something in his expression that didn't quite convince Emily. Sorry, I didn't mean to, he said, approaching. I just wanted to see how everything was going with our new star resident. Emily frowned at the mocking tone in Jack's voice. Mr. Hawthorne is adapting, she replied cautiously. It's a process. Oh, I'm sure it is, Jack said, his smile growing wider, especially with such a dedicated nurse taking care of him. Emily felt a chill run down her spine. There was something in the way Jack looked at her that made her uncomfortable. I'm just doing my job, Jack, nothing more. Of course, Jack nodded, but his tone suggested he didn't believe her. It's just that, well, I've heard things. What kind of things? Emily asked, her irritation growing. Jack shrugged with false innocence. Oh, you know, rumors that you and old Hawthorne have become quite close, that you spend a lot of time in his room. Emily felt her face redden with anger. That's ridiculous, she snapped. Mr. Hawthorne is my patient, nothing more, and I'd appreciate it if you didn't spread unfounded rumors. Jack raised his hands in a gesture of surrender, but his smile didn't disappear. Hey, I'm just saying what I've heard, but be careful. Emily, getting too involved with the residents never ends well. With those words, Jack turned and left the library, leaving Emily trembling with rage and confusion. Where had those rumors come from? And more importantly, why did they bother her so much? Shaking her head to clear her thoughts, Emily returned to her task. She had to focus on organizing the meeting. She couldn't allow Jack's insinuations to distract her, but as she worked, she couldn't help but let her mind wander to Arthur Hawthorne. Why did she feel that strange connection with him? And why, despite his rudeness and bad temper, did she find herself increasingly intrigued by the mysterious businessman? What Emily didn't know was that those questions would soon find answers that would change her life forever and reveal a secret that had remained hidden for decades. Meanwhile, in his room, Arthur Hawthorne looked out the window. His mind a whirlwind of thoughts and memories. Emily's image mixed in his mind with that of another woman, a woman from the past he had tried to forget for years. It can't be, he muttered to himself. It's impossible. But deep in his heart, Arthur knew that nothing was impossible, and that the past, no matter how much one tries to bury it, always finds a way to come to light. With a tired sigh, Arthur moved away from the window and sat in his armchair. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to think about that woman, that youthful love he had sacrificed for the sake of his ambition. Linda, he whispered, the name leaving his lips like a painful caress. What have I done? And so, as the sun began to set over Sunset Grove, The threads of destiny began to interweave, setting the stage for a revelation that would shake the foundations of Emily and Arthur's lives and change the course of their destinies forever. The next morning dawned grey and rainy at Sunset Grove. As if the sky reflected the storm of emotions brewing inside, Emily arrived early, determined to make the first meeting of the discussion group a success. As she walked through the halls, she couldn't help but notice the looks and whispers of some of her co-workers. Jack's words from the day before echoed in her mind, increasing her discomfort. When she reached Arthur's room, she took a deep breath before knocking. The businessman's gruff voice told her to come in. "Good morning, Mr. Hawthorne," she greeted with a smile, trying to hide her nervousness. "Are you ready for today's meeting?" Arthur, already dressed in an impeccable suit, looked at her with a mixture of curiosity and wariness. "As ready as one can be for a meeting with a group of boring old people," he replied dryly. Emily felt a pang of disappointment, but refused to let that discourage her. "I assure you it won't be boring, Mr. Hawthorne. I've carefully selected the participants. I think you'll find the discussion stimulating." Arthur studied her for a moment, as if trying to decipher a complicated puzzle. "We'll see," he finally said. "By the way, what's going on with the television? I've been trying to turn it on for days." "And it doesn't work." Emily frowned, confused. "The TV doesn't work? How strange. I'll make sure someone from maintenance comes to check it out today." "Don't bother," Arthur growled. "I'm sure it's the work of my dear children. They probably fear I'll see the news and discover what they're doing with my company." The bitterness in his voice surprised Emily. "Mr. Hawthorne, I'm sure your children only want what's best for you." "What's best for me?" Arthur interrupted with a dry laugh. "What's best for them? You mean they've locked me up here so they can run the company as they please? But they're wrong if they think I'm going to sit idly by." Emily didn't know how to respond. The determination in Arthur's eyes worried her. "Mr. Hawthorne," she said softly, "I understand your frustration, but please don't do anything rash. Remember, you're here to recover." Arthur looked at her intently, and for a moment, Emily thought she saw a flash of vulnerability in his eyes. "And what do you know about recovery, Emily Parker? What do you know about losing everything?" The question took her by surprise. For an instant, Emily thought about her sick mother, about the dreams she had had to abandon. "I know more than you think, Mr. Hawthorne," she replied quietly. Something in her tone must have struck a chord with Arthur, because his expression softened slightly. "I suppose we all have our battles," he muttered, more to himself than to her. Before Emily could respond, someone knocked on the door. It was Lucy, the director of the residence. "Good morning," she greeted with a tense smile. "Emily, can I talk to you for a moment?" Emily nodded, feeling a sudden apprehension. "Of course, Mr. Hawthorne. I'll be back in a moment to accompany you to the meeting." Once in the hallway, Lucy looked at her with concern. "Emily, is everything all right? I've heard rumors." Emily felt her heart race. "Rumors? What kind of rumors?" Lucy seemed uncomfortable. "Well, some employees have commented that you spend a lot of time with Mr. Hawthorne, more than necessary." Emily couldn't help but feel a wave of indignation. "That's ridiculous. I'm just doing my job. Mr. Hawthorne needs special attention, that's all." Lucy nodded but didn't seem convinced. "I understand, Emily, but you must be careful. Arthur Hawthorne is a powerful and complicated man. I don't want you to get into trouble." "There's nothing to worry about," Emily insisted. "I assure you that my relationship with Mr. Hawthorne is strictly professional." Lucy looked at her for a moment longer before nodding. "All right, I trust you, Emily. Just be careful, okay?" Emily nodded, suddenly, feeling exhausted. Why did everyone seem so concerned about her relationship with Arthur? It was just her job, nothing more. Or wasn't it? Meanwhile, in the offices of Hawthorne Enterprises, Richard and Sarah were in the midst of another heated discussion. "We can't keep lying, Richard," Sarah insisted. "The investors are starting to ask questions. They need to see Dad." Richard hit the desk in frustration. "And what do you suggest we do? That we take him out of the nursing home and bring him here as if nothing had happened?" "If necessary, yes," Sarah replied firmly. "It's his company. Richard, his legacy." Before Richard could respond, Jack burst into the office. "Sir, Miss, you need to see this." He showed them a video on his tablet. It was an interview with a former Hawthorne Enterprises employee who insinuated that Arthur had been pushed out of the company against his will. Richard paled. "This is a disaster if this goes public." "We need to bring Dad back," Sarah insisted. "It's the only way to silence the rumors." Richard ran a hand through his hair, visibly stressed. "All right," he finally said. "We'll go see him today. But Sarah, if this doesn't work—" "It will work," she interrupted. "It has to work." Back at Sunset Grove, the discussion group meeting was in full swing. To everyone's surprise, Arthur had actively engaged in the conversation, sharing anecdotes from his years in business and offering advice to the other residents. Emily observed from a corner, a smile of satisfaction on her face. She had managed to bring out the Arthur Hawthorne she knew existed behind that facade of toughness. When the meeting ended, Arthur approached her. "Well, Emily Parker," he said in a tone that almost seemed like approval, "it seems you were right. This hasn't been a complete waste of time." Emily felt a wave of pride. "I'm glad you enjoyed it, Mr. Hawthorne. Would you like us to organize more meetings like this?" Arthur seemed to consider the idea for a moment. "Maybe," he finally said, "but on one condition, which is that you stop calling me Mr. Hawthorne all the time. It makes me feel even older than I am." Emily couldn't help but smile. "And what should I call you then?" "Arthur is fine," he replied, and for a moment Emily thought she saw a spark of something in his eyes. Warmth? Affection? Before she could respond, Lucy's voice interrupted them. "Mr. Hawthorne, you have visitors. Your children are here." Arthur's expression immediately hardened. Well, the heirs to the throne deign to visit the dethroned king. This will be interesting. Emily felt a sudden apprehension. "Do you want me to stay with you?" Arthur looked at her for a moment, and Emily thought she saw a flash of vulnerability in his eyes. "No," he finally said. "This is something I have to face alone." As Arthur walked away to meet his children, Emily couldn't help but feel that something important was about to happen. Something that would change the course of their lives forever. What none of them knew was that, at that very moment, Linda Parker, Emily's mother, had received a letter. A letter that contained a secret she had kept for decades. A secret that, once revealed, would shake the foundations of the Hawthorne family and change Emily's destiny forever. Meanwhile, in the visiting room, Arthur faced his children. The tension in the air was palpable. Well, he said sarcastically, "to what do I owe the honor of your visit? Have you come to see if I've kicked the bucket yet?" Richard and Sarah exchanged uncomfortable glances. "Dad, please," Sarah began. "We just wanted to see how you were doing." "Oh, I'm wonderful," Arthur replied with false cheer. "Locked up in this place, away from my company, from my life. How could I not be fine?" Richard stepped forward, his face a mask of determination. "Dad, you have to understand, we did it for your own good. You were working too much. Your health was at risk." "Don't come to me with those lies," Arthur exploded, standing up. "You did it to push me aside, to take control of the company. You think I don't know, that I haven't realized what you're doing?" Sarah tried to intervene. "Dad, please, calm down. It's not good for your health." "To hell with my health," Arthur roared. "What about the health of the company? What about my legacy?" Richard, losing patience, counterattacked. "Your legacy? You mean the legacy of a man who sacrificed everything, even his family, for power and money? Is that the legacy you want to protect?" Richard's words fell like lightning in the room. Arthur stood motionless, his face a mask of shock and pain. For a moment, it seemed like he was going to collapse. "Out," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "Get out of here, both of you." "Dad," Sarah began, but Arthur interrupted her with a brusque gesture. "I said get out. You're no longer my children. I no longer have children." Richard took Sarah by the arm and guided her to the door. Before leaving, he turned to his father one last time. "I'm sorry, Dad. I really am." Once alone, Arthur collapsed into his armchair, his body shaking with contained emotions. This is how Emily found him when she entered a few minutes later. "Ah, Mr. Hawthorne?" she asked softly, concerned about his state. "Are you all right?" Arthur looked up, and Emily was surprised to see tears in his eyes. "No, Emily," he replied in a broken voice. "I'm not all right. I don't think I ever have been." Without thinking, Emily approached and took his hand. "Do you want to talk about it?" Arthur looked at her, and for a moment he seemed to be seeing someone else. "You're so much like her," he muttered. "Like who?" Emily asked, feeling they were on the verge of something important. Arthur seemed to snap out of his trance. "No one," he said, withdrawing his hand, "a ghost from the past." Emily wanted to ask more, but at that moment, her phone rang. It was her mother. "Emily," Linda said, her voice trembling, "I need you to come home. Now there's something I need to tell you." "Mom, what's going on? Are you okay?" "I'm fine, honey. But there's something you need to know. Something I should have told you a long time ago." Emily looked at Arthur, torn between her concern for him and the urgency in her mother's voice. "Go," Arthur said, as if he could read her thoughts. "Your mother needs you." With one last worried glance at Arthur, Emily hurriedly left Sunset Grove, not knowing that she was about to discover a secret that would change her life forever. Meanwhile, in a dark corner of Sunset Grove's garden, Jack was speaking quietly on the phone. "Yes, Mr. Richard, I understand. I'll watch every move of the old man and the girl. Don't worry. I'll find out what's going on between them." He hung up the phone with a malicious smile. Things were about to get very interesting at Sunset Grove. Rain was falling heavily over the city as Emily drove hurriedly to the small apartment she shared with her mother. Her mind was a whirlwind of worries and questions. What was this important thing her mother needed to tell her? And why now? Upon arrival, she found Linda sitting on the couch, holding a yellowed envelope in her trembling hands. Her face, normally serene despite her illness, showed signs of having been crying. "Mom," Emily said, rushing to her side. "What's going on? You've scared me." Linda looked up, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and determination. "Emily, my dear," she began with a shaky voice, "there's something I should have told you a long time ago, something about your father." Emily felt her heart race. The topic of her father had always been taboo in their home. All she knew was that he had abandoned them before she was born. "My father," she repeated, unsure. "Mum, you know I don't need to know anything about him. He abandoned us, that's all that matters." Linda shook her head, tears forming in her eyes. "No, Emily, that's not the whole truth." With trembling hands, she extended the envelope to her. "Read this, you'll understand everything." With her heart pounding, Emily opened the envelope and began to read. As her eyes scanned the lines, her face went from confusion to shock and then to disbelief. "No," she whispered, dropping the letter. "It can't be. This has to be a joke." Linda took her daughter's hands in hers. "It's not a joke, my love. It's the truth. Your father, is Arthur Hawthorne." The world seemed to stop for Emily suddenly. Everything made sense. The strange familiarity she had felt with Arthur from the beginning, the looks he gave her, as if he were seeing someone else. But how? She finally managed to ask, "Why did you never tell me?" Linda closed her eyes as if the weight of the memories was too much to bear. "We were young, Emily. I worked as a secretary in his company when he was just starting out. We fell in love, but his ambition was stronger. When I told him I was pregnant, he offered me money to disappear from his life. He said a child would ruin his plans." Emily listened in silence, trying to process the enormity of what she was discovering. "I refused to accept his money," Linda continued. "I told him I would raise my child alone. He said it was for the best, that he could never be a good father, that the only thing that mattered to him was his company." "And he never tried to contact us?" Emily asked, her voice barely a whisper. Linda shook her head. "No, I guess for him, it was as if we had never existed." Emily stood up, feeling she needed to move, to do something to release the storm of emotions she felt inside. "Why are you telling me this now, Mum? Why, after all this time?" Linda pointed to the letter. "That letter arrived a few days ago. It's from an old friend who worked at Hawthorne Enterprises. He told me about Arthur's situation, that he was in a nursing home. When you told me where you were working, I knew it was fate, that you had the right to know the truth." Emily leaned against the wall, feeling her legs couldn't support her Arthur Hawthorne. The man she had been caring for, the man she had started to see in a different way, was her father. The same man who had abandoned them, who had chosen power and money over his own daughter. What am I supposed to do now? She asked, more to herself than to her mother. Linda stood up with difficulty and approached her daughter. That depends on you, my love. I'm not asking you to forgive him or accept him. Into your life, I just thought you deserved to know the truth. Emily hugged her mother, allowing the tears she had been holding back to finally flow. Thank you for telling me, Mom. I need time to process all of this. I know, my dear, Linda replied, stroking her daughter's hair. Take all the time you need. I'm here for you no matter what. Meanwhile, at Sunset Grove, Arthur was in his room, staring out the window with a lost gaze. The visit from his children had stirred up emotions he thought he had buried long ago. And then there was Emily, who reminded him so much of a knock on the door, interrupted his thoughts. It was Jack. Mr. Hawthorne, he said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. May I come in? There's something I think you should know. Arthur looked at him suspiciously. He had never fully trusted Jack, but he was efficient at his job. Come in, he finally said. What's this about? Jack entered and closed the door behind him. It's about Emily Parker, sir. I've been doing a little digging, and, well, there's something curious about her. Arthur felt his heart race. What do you mean? You see, sir, Jack continued, savoring every word, it turns out that Emily's mother worked for you many years ago as a secretary, if I'm not mistaken. The color drained from Arthur's face. It couldn't be, could it? What are you insinuating, Jack? He asked in a tense voice. Jack shrugged with false innocence. Oh, nothing, sir. I just thought it was a curious coincidence after all. Emily is about the same age she would be if— Get out, Arthur interrupted, his voice trembling with emotion. Get out of here right now. Jack smiled, knowing he had planted the seed of doubt. As you wish, sir. I just thought you should know. Once alone, Arthur collapsed into his armchair, his mind a whirlwind of memories and possibilities. Emily, could it be? Could she be the daughter he had, abandoned so many years ago? Guilt and regret, feelings he had kept at bay for decades, hit him hard. If it was true, if Emily was his daughter, how could he face her? How could he explain the decisions he had made? While Arthur struggled with his inner demons, in another part of the city, Richard and Sarah were having their own crisis to handle. This is getting out of control, Richard, Sarah was saying, pacing nervously around the office. The rumors about Dad are everywhere. Investors are nervous, stocks are falling. Richard hit the desk in frustration. I know. But what do you want us to do? We can't just bring Dad back as if nothing had happened. Maybe we should tell the truth, Sarah suggested. Explain that Dad is taking a break for health reasons. And admit that we've been lying all this time, Richard interrupted. That would be business suicide. Before Sarah could respond, the phone rang. It was Jack. Mr. Richard, said the voice on the other end of the line, I think we have a problem, a big problem. What is it now, Jack? Richard asked, fearing the answer. It's about Emily Parker, the nurse who's taking care of your father. I've discovered something interesting about her. As Jack shared his discovery, Richard's eyes widened in surprise and then narrowed with determination. I see, he finally said. Good work, Jack. Keep your eyes open and don't do anything for now. I'll handle this. He hung up the phone and looked at his sister. Sarah, I think I've just found the solution to all our problems. Back in Emily's apartment, the young nurse had finally calmed down, enough to think clearly. She looked at her mother, who was watching her with concern. What are you going to do, my dear? Linda asked softly. Emily took a deep breath. I don't know, Mom. Part of me wants to go there and yell at him, demand answers. Another part wants to run away and never see him again. Linda took her daughter's hands in hers. Whatever decision you make, I'll support you. But Emily, remember this. The past can't be changed, but the future is in your hands. Emily nodded, grateful for her mother's support. I think I need to confront him. I need to hear his version of the story. And then I'll decide what to do. You're stronger than you think, my love, Linda said with a smile full of pride and sadness. Whatever happens, remember that you're Emily Parker, Your worth doesn't depend on who your father is." With a final hug to her mother, Emily prepared to return to Sunset Grove. She knew that the conversation she was about to have with Arthur Hawthorne would change her life forever. What she didn't know was that the revelations that were about to come would shake the foundations not only of her life, but of the entire Hawthorne family. As she drove back to Sunset Grove, the rain had stopped, but the sky remained dark and threatening. Emily felt it was a perfect reflection of her mood. A storm was coming, and she was at the center of it. Upon arriving at Sunset Grove, Emily headed straight for Arthur's room. Her heart was pounding, and she had to take several deep breaths before gathering the courage to knock on the door. "Come in." Arthur's voice was heard from inside. Emily entered, closing the door behind her. Arthur was sitting by the window, his figure silhouetted against the grey sky. When he turned to look at her, Emily saw something in his eyes that she had never seen before. Fear. "Emily," Arthur said, his voice barely a whisper. "There's something I need to tell you." "And I have something to tell you, Father," Emily replied, her voice trembling slightly as she pronounced the last word. Arthur remained motionless, the color draining from his face. You know." Emily nodded, feeling tears threatening to well up again. "My mother told me everything. How could you? How could you abandon us like that?" Arthur stood up with difficulty, approaching her. "Emily, there's no excuse for what I did. I was young, ambitious. I believed that a child would only be an obstacle in my path to success." "An obstacle," Emily repeated, anger replacing pain. "Is that all I was to you? An inconvenience?" No, Arthur denied vehemently. "That's what I believed then. But I was wrong, so wrong." He collapsed heavily into the nearest armchair, his face a mask of regret and pain. "I spent years trying to convince myself that I had done the right thing, that it was better this way. But the truth is that I was a coward. I was afraid of not being a good father, of making the same mistakes my father made." Emily listened in silence, fighting against the whirlwind of emotions inside her. "When I first saw you here," Arthur continued, "I felt something. I didn't know what it was. But there was something about you that seemed familiar. Now I understand. You're the spitting image of your mother when she was young." "Why did you never look for us?" Emily asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Why did you never try to contact us?" Arthur closed his eyes, as if the weight of his decisions was too much to bear. "Because I'm a coward, Emily. Because the more time passed, the harder it became to face what I had done. And then I convinced myself that you would be better off without me, that you didn't need me." "You're right," Emily said bitterly. "We didn't need you. My mother did an incredible job raising me alone, but that doesn't justify what you did." "I know," Arthur replied, his voice broken with emotion. "I don't expect your forgiveness, Emily. I don't deserve it, but I want you to know that if I could go back, I would change everything. I would give all my fortune, all my success, for the chance to have been your father." Emily felt the tears she had been holding back finally overflow. "It's too late for that," she said in a choked voice. "You can't just appear in my life after so many years and expect everything to be okay." Arthur nodded slowly, the weight of his actions visible in every line of his face. "I know, Emily, I don't expect you to forgive me. I just want you to know that I'm sorry, more than you can imagine." A heavy silence fell over the room. Emily struggled against the whirlwind of emotions inside her: anger, pain, confusion, and a hint of something she didn't want to admit: hope. Finally, Emily spoke, her voice barely a whisper. "What am I supposed to do now? How am I supposed to feel?" Arthur looked at her, his eyes full of a regret that seemed to consume him. "I can't tell you how you should feel, Emily. You have every right to hate me, to want nothing to do with me, but if you allow me, I'd like to try to get to know you, to be part of your life somehow." Emily was about to respond when a knock on the door interrupted them. It was Jack. "Excuse the interruption," he said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes, "but Mr. Richard and Miss Sarah are here. They say it's urgent." Arthur frowned. "Tell them I'm busy to come back tomorrow." But before Jack could respond, Richard and Sarah entered the room. They stopped short when they saw Emily. "Well, well," Richard said, his voice loaded with sarcasm. "It seems we've arrived at an interesting moment. Are we interrupting something, Dad?" Arthur stood up, instinctively placing himself between Emily and his children. "Richard, Sarah, this isn't a good time. I suggest you leave." Sarah looked at Emily curiously. "Who is she, Dad?" "Your new favorite nurse." "She's much more than that," Arthur replied, his voice firm. "Emily is my daughter." The silence that followed that statement was deafening, Richard, and Sarah looked at Emily with a mixture of shock and disbelief. "Your daughter?" Richard repeated, his voice tinged with anger. "What the hell are you talking about?" Arthur took a deep breath. "It's a long story, but yes, Emily is my daughter, the daughter I abandoned many years ago, before you were born." Sarah collapsed into a chair, her face pale. "It can't be. This has to be a joke." "It's not a joke," Emily intervened, finding her voice. "I just found out myself, believe me. I'm as surprised as you are." Richard approached Emily, his eyes narrowed with suspicion. "And what is it that you want? Money? A part of the company?" "Richard," Arthur exclaimed, "don't you dare speak to her like that." Emily raised a hand, stopping Arthur. "I don't need you to defend me," she said firmly. Then she turned to Richard. "I don't want anything from you, not money, not the company, nothing. I just wanted the truth." "And you expect us to believe that?" Richard insisted. "You appear out of nowhere, claiming to be our father's long-lost daughter, and you don't want anything?" "It's the truth," Arthur intervened. I made many mistakes in my life. Abandoning Emily and her mother was the worst of them all. But now I have the chance to make things right." Sarah, who had been silent, finally spoke. "If this is true, what does it mean for us? For the company?" Arthur looked at his 3 children, his face a mixture of emotions. "It changes nothing in terms of the company. You're still my heirs, but in personal terms, I hope we can be a family. All of us." Richard let out a bitter laugh. "A family? After everything you've done? After hiding this from us for years?" "I understand your anger, Richard," Arthur said. "You have every right to be upset with me. I've made many mistakes, but this is my chance to make amends, to be the father I never was. For any of you." Emily, who had been observing the exchange in silence, finally spoke. "I don't intend to burst into your lives," she said, looking at Richard and Sarah. "I'm not looking to cause trouble. I just wanted to know the truth about my origin. And now that I know it, I need time to process it." Sarah approached Emily, studying her closely. "You look like him," she finally said. "You have his eyes." Emily didn't know how to respond to that. The situation was so surreal that she almost wanted to laugh. Richard, for his part, seemed to be struggling with his own emotions. "This changes everything," he muttered. "Everything we thought we knew." Arthur stepped forward. "I know, it's a lot to process for all of us, but I ask you to give Emily a chance. She's not to blame for my mistakes." A tense silence filled the room. Each of them was dealing with their own emotions and thoughts. Finally, Emily spoke. I think we all need time. Time to process this, to think about what it means for each of us. I don't expect you to accept me immediately into your lives. In fact, I don't even know if I'm ready for that. But maybe we can start by getting to know each other, little by little." Sarah nodded slowly. "I think that's fair. I need time to take all this in." Richard, for his part, was still looking at Emily with suspicion. "This doesn't change anything regarding the company," he finally said. "I hope you understand that I don't want anything from the company," Emily replied firmly. "I have my own life, my own path. I'm not here to claim anything." Arthur looked at his 3 children, his face a mixture of hope and fear. "I know I've failed all of you in different ways, but if you give me the chance, I'd like to try to be the father you all deserve. Emily, Richard, Sarah, you are my legacy, not the company, not the money." Arthur's words seemed to have an impact on everyone. Even Richard, who had been the most hostile, appeared to soften his expression. "This is going to take time," Sarah finally said. "A lot of time, and it won't be easy." "I know," Arthur replied, "but I'm willing to do whatever it takes. For all of you, Emily, feeling overwhelmed by the intensity of emotions in the room, took a step towards the door. I think I need some air, if you'll excuse me." She quickly left, leaving the Hawthorne family to process what had just happened. As she walked through the halls of Sunset Grove, her mind was spinning. In a matter of hours, her life had taken a 180-degree turn. She had a father, siblings, a family she never knew existed. What Emily didn't know was that, while she struggled with her own emotions, the revelations of that day were about to trigger a series of events that would shake the foundations of the Hawthorne family and change the course of their lives forever. Meanwhile, in the shadows, Jack smiled. The information he had just obtained was pure gold, and he knew exactly how to use it to his own advantage. The storm that was brewing over Sunset Grove was about to unleash its full force. The days following the revelation were a whirlwind of emotions for everyone involved. Emily had taken a few days off from Sunset Grove to process everything that had happened, spending time with her mother and reflecting on the turn her life had taken. Meanwhile, at the residence, Arthur faced his own demons. The guilt and regret he had kept at bay for decades now consumed him. He spent hours looking out the window, remembering the past and wondering how he could make amends for his mistakes. Richard and Sarah, for their part, dealt with the news in different ways. Sarah, always the more empathetic of the two, had begun to research Emily, trying to understand this new sister who had appeared in their lives. Richard, on the other hand, had immersed himself even more in work, as if he could ignore the situation if he kept himself busy enough. It was in the midst of this emotional chaos that Jack decided to make his move. One morning, he entered Richard's office with a smile that boded no good. "Mr. Richard," he said, closing the door behind him, "I think I have information that will interest you." Richard looked up from his papers, frowning. "What is it about, Jack?" "It's about Emily Parker," Jack replied, savoring each word. "I've been doing some research, and well, it seems our new sister isn't as innocent as she appears." Richard leaned forward, his interest piqued despite himself. "Explain yourself." Jack pulled an envelope from his jacket and placed it on the desk. "It turns out that Emily's mother, Linda Parker, is seriously ill. She needs an expensive treatment they can't afford. And just when they're desperate for money, Emily discovers she's the daughter of one of the richest men in the country. Convenient, don't you think?" Richard opened the envelope, examining its contents with growing alarm. There were medical records, unpaid bills, even photos of Emily and her mother at the hospital. "Are you suggesting this is all a scam?" Richard asked, his mind working at full speed. Jack shrugged with false innocence. "I'm just presenting the facts, sir. You draw your own conclusions." Richard stood up, pacing the office with agitation. "This changes everything. If Emily is after Dad's money, it could destroy the company," Jack completed. "After all, as Arthur Hawthorne's legitimate daughter, she would be entitled to a significant portion of the inheritance." Richard stopped, looking at Jack with a mixture of gratitude and suspicion. "Why? Are you showing me this, Jack? What do you gain?" Jack smiled, showing his true colors for the first time. "Let's say I'd appreciate it if my loyalty was remembered when the time comes to restructure the company." Richard nodded slowly, understanding the implication. "I see. Good work, Jack. Leave me the envelope. I'll handle this personally." Once alone, Richard collapsed into his chair, his mind a whirlwind of thoughts. He had to act fast before Emily could make her move. He picked up his phone and dialed a number. "Sarah," he said when his sister answered, "we need to talk. It's about Emily." Meanwhile, in the Parkers' small apartment, Emily and her mother were having their own crucial conversation. "Are you sure about this, my dear?" Linda asked, her face pale from illness but her eyes full of maternal concern. Emily nodded, taking her mother's hands in hers. "I'm sure. Mom, I've thought about this a lot. I can't keep working at Sunset Grove, not after everything that's happened. But I can't simply ignore the truth either. I need to give this relationship, whatever it is, a chance." Linda smiled weakly. "You're stronger than I ever was. If you believe this is the right thing to do, I support you completely." Emily hugged her mother, holding back tears. I love you, Mom. No matter what happens, that will never change. You are my family. You always will be. They separated upon hearing the doorbell ring. Emily got up to answer, surprised to find Sarah on the other side. "Hello, Emily," Sarah said, looking as uncomfortable as Emily felt. "Can we talk?" Emily nodded, allowing her to enter. Linda, understanding the need for privacy, excused herself and retired to her room. Once alone, Sarah spoke. "I've been thinking a lot about all of this, Emily, and well, I think I owe you an apology. My initial reaction wasn't fair to you. You're not to blame for our father's decisions." Emily was surprised by the sincerity in Sarah's voice. "Thank you, Sarah. That means a lot to me." Sarah smiled shyly. "In fact, I was wondering if you'd like to have coffee with me someday, to get to know each other better." Emily was about to respond when the sound of an argument in the hallway interrupted them. Seconds later, the door burst open, revealing Richard, his face contorted with anger. "You!" he shouted, pointing at Emily. "Do you think you can fool us? That you can show up out of nowhere and claim what's ours?" Sarah stepped between Richard and Emily. "Richard, what are you talking about? Calm down." Richard threw the envelope Jack had given him on the table. "This, Emily, is nothing but a scammer. This is all a plan to get money for her mother's treatment." Emily, stunned, looked at the contents of the envelope. "Where did you get this? This is private." "That doesn't matter," Richard growled. "What matters is that your little game is over. I won't allow you to destroy our family or the company." "Richard, listen to yourself," Sarah intervened. "You're jumping to conclusions. Emily hasn't even asked for anything. And are we going to wait for her to do so?" Richard replied, "No, I'm going to end this right now." He pulled out his phone, dialing a number. "Dad? It's Richard. I need you to come to Emily's apartment. There's something you need to know." Emily, feeling the situation slipping out of her hands, stepped forward. "Enough, Richard. I don't know what you think is going on, but I assure you it's not what you think." "Oh, isn't it?" Richard responded with sarcasm. "Then why don't you explain? Why don't you tell us about your mother's illness? About the debts you have?" Emily felt her heart racing. How did they know all that? "Yes, my mother is ill," she admitted. "And yes, we need money for her treatment, but that has nothing to do with Arthur or with you." Sarah, who had been examining the documents, looked up with a mixture of confusion and suspicion. "Wait a minute, Richard. Where did you get this information? This seems too detailed to be a simple investigation." Before Richard could respond, the door opened again. This time it was Arthur who entered, his face a mask of concern. "What's going on here?" he asked, looking at his children and Emily. "Richard, you said it was urgent." Richard hurried to explain his theory, showing Arthur the documents. As he spoke, Emily noticed how Arthur's expression went from confusion to understanding and then to something she couldn't identify. When Richard finished, Arthur remained silent for a moment. Then, to everyone's surprise, he began to laugh. It wasn't a happy laugh, but one loaded with bitterness and regret. "Oh, Richard," he finally said, "don't you see? This isn't a scam, it's the universe giving me the chance to redeem myself." He turned to Emily, his eyes full of an emotion she had never seen before. "Emily, I'm sorry I wasn't there for you and your mother all these years. I'm sorry you're going through this alone now, but if you'll allow me, I'd like to help. Not out of obligation or guilt, but because it's the right thing to do." Emily felt tears filling her eyes. I don't know what to say." Arthur approached her, taking her hands in his. "You don't have to say anything. Just let me be the father I should have been so many years ago. Let me help your mother. Help you. Not as an attempt to buy your affection, but as a first step towards redemption." Richard, stunned, took a step back. "Dad, you can't be serious. What about the company, the family legacy?" Arthur turned to him, his gaze firm. "Richard, don't you understand? You are my legacy. You, Sarah, and now Emily. Not the company, not the money. I've spent my entire life chasing business success, and in the process, I lost the most important thing. But now I have the chance to make things right. Sarah, who had been observing in silence, finally spoke. I think Dad is right, Richard. We've been so obsessed with the company that we forgot what really matters, family. Richard seemed to be struggling with himself, years of ambition and resentment clashing with this new reality. But everything we've worked for, it will still be there, Arthur interrupted. The company will continue to function, but it will no longer be the center of our lives. It's time we remember what really matters. At that moment, Linda came out of her room, drawn by the voices. Seeing the scene in front of her, she stopped short, her eyes fixed on Arthur. Linda, Arthur whispered, his voice laden with emotion. It's been so long. Linda looked at him, a mixture of emotions crossing her face. Arthur, I never thought I'd see you again. Arthur took a step towards her, but stopped, unsure. Linda, I'm sorry for everything. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I hope you'll give me the chance to try to make amends for my mistakes. Linda looked at her daughter, then at Richard and Sarah, and finally back at Arthur. Many years have passed, Arthur. A lot of pain, a lot of loneliness. But I also see that you've changed, that everyone has. Changed. Emily approached her mother, taking her hand. Mom, I know it's a lot to process for all of us, but I think maybe this is an opportunity. An opportunity to heal, to forgive, to be a family. Somehow. Richard, who had been struggling with his own emotions, finally spoke. I'm sorry, Emily. I jumped to conclusions. I was so obsessed with protecting what I thought was ours that I didn't see what really mattered. Sarah approached her brother, putting a hand on his shoulder. We all made mistakes, Richard, but now we have the chance to do better. Arthur looked at his gathered family, a family he never thought he would have. I know it won't be easy, he said. There's a lot to heal, a lot to forgive, but if you're willing, I'd like to try to be the family we always should have been. Emily looked at her mother, then at her newly discovered siblings, and finally at Arthur. It won't be easy, she said, but I think it's worth trying. Linda nodded slowly. One step at a time, she said, her voice soft but firm. And so, in that small apartment, surrounded by revealed truths and wounds beginning to heal, the Hawthorne Parker family took their first step towards a new beginning. Months later, Sunset Grove was no longer the place where Arthur Hawthorne was confined, but the center of a new foundation created by the family. A foundation dedicated to helping families facing serious illnesses, inspired by Linda's struggle. Emily, although no longer working there as a nurse, was a frequent visitor, helping with the administration of the foundation, along with Sarah. Richard, for his part, had found a new purpose in using his business skills to grow the foundation, discovering that helping others was more satisfying than any corporate success. One sunny afternoon, the family gathered in Sunset Grove's garden to celebrate the success of their first year of operations. Linda, whose health had improved significantly thanks to the treatment they could now afford, smiled as she watched her daughter interact with her new siblings. Arthur approached her, offering her a cup of tea. It's amazing, isn't it? He said, his voice soft and full of wonder. How everything has changed in such a short time. Linda nodded, accepting the cup. I never imagined we would be here, Arthur, after everything that happened. I know, he replied, his voice laden with regret. I know a year doesn't erase decades of absence, but I hope that, with time, you can forgive me. Linda looked at him, her eyes soft but determined. Forgiveness is a process, Arthur, but we're on the right path. Meanwhile, Emily, Richard, and Sarah were animatedly discussing future plans for the foundation. I think we should expand, Richard was saying, his old business instinct now channeled towards a noble cause. There are so many families who need help. Sarah nodded, excited. We could open centers in other cities. Imagine how many lives we could change. Emily smiled, still amazed at the turn her life had taken. It's incredible how something that started with so much pain has turned into something so beautiful. At that moment, Jack appeared in the garden, his face a mask of nervousness. Arthur saw him and excused himself, approaching him. Jack, he said, his voice firm but not hostile. I'm glad you came. Jack seemed uncomfortable, avoiding eye contact. Mr. Hawthorne, I wanted to apologize for everything, my behavior, my manipulations. Arthur raised a hand, stopping him. Jack, we all make mistakes. The important thing is how we decide to make amends for them. Have you thought about my offer? Jack nodded slowly. Yes, sir, and I'd like to accept it, if it's still available. Arthur smiled, putting a hand on Jack's shoulder. Of course it is. The Foundation can always use more willing hands to help, and I think you'll find there's more satisfaction in helping others than in seeking personal gain. Jack, visibly moved, nodded. Thank you, Mr. Hawthorne. I won't let you down. As Arthur guided Jack towards the rest of the family to introduce him in his new role, Emily observed the scene with a mixture of amazement and gratitude. In just over a year, her life had come full circle. From being a nurse, struggling to support her sick mother, she was now part of a united family and a project that helped hundreds of people. That night, as the celebration came to an end, Emily found herself alone with Arthur for a moment. I never imagined things would turn out like this, she said, looking at the stars that were beginning to appear in the night sky. Arthur followed her gaze. Neither did I, Emily. For years, I believed that success and power were all that mattered, but now I know I was wrong. True wealth is in family, in being able to make a difference in the lives of others. Emily took her father's hand, a gesture that still felt new but increasingly natural. Thank you, she said simply. For what? Arthur asked, surprised. For giving us this opportunity, for proving that it's never too late to change, to do the right thing. Arthur felt tears filling his eyes. No, Emily. Thank you. You were the one who gave me this opportunity, who showed me there was still goodness in the world, that I could still be a better person. They hugged, father and daughter under the starry sky in the distance. Linda watched them with a soft smile, her heart full of a peace she never thought possible. Richard and Sarah joined them, and soon the whole family was gathered, sharing laughter and plans for the future. A future that, although uncertain, they would face together. As the night progressed and the celebration came to an end, each member of the Hawthorne Parker family reflected on the incredible journey that had brought them to this moment. Arthur, once a cold and calculating magnate, now understood the true meaning of wealth and success. Emily had found not only her biological father, but also a new family and a purpose greater than herself. Richard and Sarah had learned that there is more to life than business success, discovering the satisfaction of helping others. And Linda, after years of struggle and loneliness, finally had the support and love she had always deserved. Sunset Grove, once a place of confinement for Arthur, had transformed into a symbol of hope and new beginnings for many. The Hawthorne Parker Foundation had become a beacon of light for families in desperate situations, offering not only financial help, but also emotional support and community. As the family said their goodbyes and prepared to depart, each carried with them the certainty that, no matter how dark the path may seem, there is always hope for redemption and change. They had learned that forgiveness, though difficult, has the power to heal deep wounds and unite what was once broken. Emily, looking at the building that had changed her life one last time, smiled. The future, once uncertain and frightening, now shone with promises and possibilities. She knew the road wouldn't always be easy, that there would be challenges and difficult moments ahead, but she also knew that she would no longer have to face them alone. With a final hug to her father and a shared smile with her siblings, Emily headed towards the car where her mother was waiting. As they drove away from Sunset Grove, she carried with her not only the love of her new family, but also the certainty that miracles exist, that forgiveness has the power to transform lives, and that it's never too late for a new beginning. And so, under the starry sky, the story of the Hawthornes and Parkers didn't come to an end, but began a new chapter. A chapter filled with hope, love, and the promise of a bright future, built on the foundations of forgiveness and redemption. As the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months, the Hawthorne Parker Foundation continued to grow and thrive. Emily, who had once struggled to make ends meet as a nurse, now found herself at the helm of a major charitable organization, working alongside her newfound family to make a difference in the lives of countless individuals. Richard, once driven solely by business ambition, discovered a new purpose in life. He applied his keen business acumen to expanding the foundation's reach, setting up new centers in neighboring cities and forging partnerships with other charitable organizations. The satisfaction he felt from helping others far surpassed any thrill he had ever experienced in the corporate world. Sarah, with her natural empathy and people skills, became the face of the foundation. She spent her days meeting with families, listening to their stories, and ensuring that the foundation's resources were allocated where they were needed most. For the first time in her life, she felt truly fulfilled. Arthur, now in his twilight years, found peace in watching his children work together. He spent his days at Sunset Grove, not as a reluctant resident, but as an active member of the community, sharing his vast business knowledge with other residents and helping to organize various activities. The guilt that had weighed on him for decades slowly began to lift as he witnessed the positive impact his family was making. Linda's health continued to improve with the treatment she was now able to receive. She became a beacon of hope for many of the families the foundation helped, often sharing her story and offering words of encouragement to those facing similar struggles. Jack, true to his word, dedicated himself to the foundation with the same zeal he had once applied to his manipulative schemes. He found redemption in honest work and the gratitude of those he helped, slowly earning the trust and respect of the Hawthorne Parker family. One crisp autumn morning, as the family gathered for their monthly foundation meeting at Sunset Grove, Emily couldn't help but marvel at how far they had come. The conference room, once a symbol of Arthur's isolation, was now filled with laughter, animated discussion, and the warmth of family bonds. As Arthur called the meeting to order, his eyes shining with pride, Emily felt a wave of emotion wash over her. She looked around the table, at Richard, passionately outlining plans for a new outreach program, at Sarah, her notebook filled with stories of families they had helped, at her mother, sitting beside Arthur, her face glowing with health and happiness, and finally at Arthur himself, the father she had once resented, now a pillar of strength and wisdom in her life. "Before we begin," Arthur said, his voice filled with emotion, "I just want to say how proud I am of all of you, of what we've built together. This foundation, this family, it's more than I ever dreamed possible." Emily reached out and squeezed her father's hand. "We couldn't have done it without you, Dad," she said, the word Dad now flowing naturally from her lips. Richard nodded in agreement. "You taught us the most important lesson, Dad, that true success isn't measured in dollars and cents, but in the lives we touch and the difference we make." Sarah wiped a tear from her eye. "We're the lucky ones," she added. "We got a second chance at being a family, and now we get to give second chances to others." Linda, who had been quietly observing, spoke up. "I never imagined, all those years ago, that things would turn out like this," she said, her voice soft but strong. "But I'm grateful every day for this beautiful family and the work we do." As the meeting progressed, discussing new initiatives and sharing success stories, Emily felt a sense of completeness she had never known before. The journey hadn't been easy. There had been arguments, misunderstandings, and moments of doubt. But through it all, they had persevered, held together by the bonds of family and a shared commitment to making a difference. Later that evening, as the family gathered in the garden of Sunset Grove for a quiet dinner, Emily found herself sitting next to Arthur. The sun was setting, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, reminiscent of that fateful day when Arthur had first arrived at Sunset Grove. "Penny for your thoughts?" Arthur asked, noticing Emily's contemplative expression. Emily smiled. "I was just thinking about how much has changed, how one decision, one moment of truth can alter the course of so many lives." Arthur nodded, his eyes misty. "With memories, I spent so many years running from the truth, Emily, hiding behind my wealth and power. I never realized that the greatest treasure was right in front of me all along." "We can't change the past, Dad," Emily said gently, "but we're writing a beautiful future together." Arthur squeezed her hand. "Indeed we are, and I promise you, I'll spend every day making up for lost time." As they sat there, watching Richard and Sarah playfully argue over the last piece of dessert, Linda laughing at their antics, Emily felt a profound sense of peace. The wounds of the past had healed, replaced by the joy of the present and the promise of the future. The Hawthorne-Parker family had been forged in the crucible of pain, secrets, and regret. But from those ashes they had risen stronger and more united than ever. Their story was a testament to the power of forgiveness, the strength of family bonds, and the transformative nature of love. As night fell over Sunset Grove, stars twinkling in the velvet sky, Emily knew that this was just the beginning. There would be more challenges to face, more lives to touch, more good to do. But together as a family they could face anything. And so the legacy of the Hawthornes and Parkers continued to unfold, a beacon of hope in a world that sometimes seemed dark. Their story, once marred by abandonment and bitterness, had become a symphony of redemption, love, and the enduring power of second chances. In the years that followed, the Hawthorne-Parker Foundation became a model for charitable organizations across the country. Its success story was featured in business magazines and social impact journals, inspiring others to use their resources for the greater good. Emily, once a struggling nurse, became a respected leader in the non-profit sector, often invited to speak at conferences about the Foundation's innovative approaches to healthcare and family support. She never forgot her roots, though, and always made time to personally connect with the families they helped. Richard's business acumen, coupled with his newfound passion for social impact, led to groundbreaking partnerships between the foundation and major corporations. He developed a program that encouraged businesses to contribute not just money, but also expertise and resources to support families in need. Sarah's empathy and communication skills made her the heart of the foundation. She started a mentorship program, connecting families who had overcome health crises with those just beginning their journeys. Her gentle guidance and unwavering support touched countless lives. Arthur, in his final years, found peace and purpose he had never known before. He became a beloved figure at Sunset Grove, known for his wisdom, kindness, and the twinkle in his eye when he spoke of his family. He spent his days sharing stories with other residents, offering business advice to young entrepreneurs who sought him out, and cherishing every moment with his children and grandchildren. Linda's recovery became a source of hope for many. She started a support group for parents facing similar health challenges, offering not just emotional support, but practical advice on navigating the healthcare system. Her strength and resilience inspired many to keep fighting, no matter the odds. As for Jack, his journey of redemption was perhaps the most remarkable of all. From a manipulative schemer, he transformed into one of the Foundation's most dedicated employees. His insight into the darker side of human nature proved invaluable in identifying and preventing potential frauds and scams targeting vulnerable families. He found purpose in protecting those he once might have exploited. On a warm summer evening, 5 years after the Foundation's inception, the family gathered once again in the gardens of Sunset Grove. This time, they were joined by hundreds of others, families they had helped, employees of the Foundation, supporters, and friends. It was the Foundation's annual gala, a celebration of lives changed and hope restored. As Emily stood at the podium, looking out at the sea of faces, she felt a surge of emotion. Her father sat in the front row, older now, but his eyes still bright with pride. Beside him was Linda, her hand clasped in his, a picture of health and happiness. Richard and Sarah stood to the side, their own families with them. The next generation of Hawthornes already learning the value of compassion and service. 5 years ago, Emily began, her voice strong and clear. This foundation was born out of a family's journey from pain to healing, from separation to unity. We started with a simple goal, to help families facing medical crises, but along the way we discovered something profound. We discovered the power of second chances. She paused, looking at each member of her family. We learned that it's never too late to right a wrong, to rebuild what was broken, to love what was once lost. And we learned that when we extend a hand to others, we often find our own healing. As she spoke, Emily saw tears in many eyes, felt the resonance of her words in the hearts of those gathered. She saw nodding heads, clasped hands, shared smiles of understanding. Today, we celebrate not just the work of our foundation, but the resilience of the human spirit. We celebrate every family that has found hope in darkness, every individual who has risen above their circumstances, every act of kindness that has rippled out to touch countless lives. She raised her glass, and the crowd followed suit. "To second chances," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "To the family we choose, the love we nurture, and the legacy we create together, may we continue to be a light in the darkness, a hand in times of need, and a reminder that with love and unity anything is possible." As the applause rang out, Emily stepped down from the podium and into the waiting arms of her family. In that moment, surrounded by love and the tangible results of their shared mission, she knew that they had created something truly extraordinary. The story of the Hawthorne Parker family, once a tale of abandonment and regret, had become an epic of redemption, reconciliation, and the transformative power of love. It was a story that would continue to inspire and change lives for generations to come. And as the stars twinkled above Sunset Grove, as laughter and music filled the air, the Hawthorne Parker family stood united, a living testament to the enduring power of forgiveness, the strength of family bonds, and the beautiful possibilities that arise when we open our hearts to second chances.